Good evening, everyone. I am calling to order the budget work session of the Board of Commissions of the City of Tarpon Springs on Thursday, August 13, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. Ms. Jacobs, roll call, please.
Mayor LaHousas,
Here.
Vice Mayor Carr,
Here.
Commissioner Terrapini,
Here.
Commissioner Donovan,
Here.
Commissioner Vaticiotis.
Yes. Here.
I'd like to remind to everyone that due to the health crisis that we continue to face, the meetings will continue to be conducted by video conferencing and provide for public comments to protect the public and the employees. And the purpose of tonight's meeting is for the Board of Commissioners to study issues, to gather and to analyze information, and to clarify questions. No votes are conducted during the work sessions. No public comments will be allowed tonight. However, will be allowed during the two public hearings that are scheduled for Thursday, September 3rd and Tuesday, September 15, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. The first item on the agenda tonight is proposed budget fiscal year 2021 presentation. Mr. Licouris, are you ready to present the budget to us? Mr. Licouris? You mute Mr. Licouris.
Yes, Mr. Herring will give that presentation.
Thank you.
Well, good evening, Mayor Commissioners. Ron Herring, Finance Director. Tonight we have the first budget workshop on the fiscal year 2021 budget. And if I can, I'll try to be a brief presentation because I know you all want to dig into the budget book here. So let me just do my screen share thing. Can you all see that okay?
Very clear.
Okay, thank you. The budget process to date, it started back in February. Departments have entered their budget requests. I can tell you, it's a long process. I'll tell you, it's already going on 6-7 months now. Sometimes I forget what we were doing back then 6 months ago and stuff, but I do thank all the departments for everything they've done with their budgets. In March, we developed a payroll budget. April, we put in the revenue projections. All funds have been balanced in the budget that you received. There is no unassigned fund balance, which is the unrestricted reserves used to balance the general fund. And in May through July, the Budget Advisory Committee reviewed the budgets and also met with the department heads. And I just want to thank the Budget Advisory Committee for all their time they spent on the budget. They spent hours going over each fund, each department, every line item in the department's budgets. And then they met with every department. So they spent hours on the budget document. And just, you might know this already, but there's two budget books. One's the 3-ring book, the big detail book, and it's got everything in it, the table of contents, revenues, expenditures, justifications, personnel schedules. So if you like detail, that book's got it all. If you're looking for something particular, the table of contents has a lot of good information on it there. About 4 or 5 years ago, I started adding in what we call the executive summary. It takes those numbers, all the information in the detail report and puts them in the varying formats and also compares prior years. And I highlighted there the executive summary budget message, highlighted in yellow. That's new this year. So if you want to just get the highlights of some funds, this is a good document to go to. The other ones are some of the same ones we've had previously, the personnel, property values, debt summary, general fund summary. Highlighted in yellow is a community redevelopment agency fund. That's new this year. I thought we'd put that one in there also, but it's also showing like the other funds like general fund and water and sewer, some comparative information. So that's the executive summary. And just to break out, part of the executive summary in the back has the CIP information. It's some good information in the back. I just thought I'd highlight 5-year CIP summary, page 106 to 107. That's got, on those 2 pages, it's got all the 5. If you're looking for all the CIP projects, it's on those 2 pages right there. The next page is from 108 to 121. you can go to each fund that makes up the CIP, and it shows a 5-year projection with the revenues, the expenditures, and the fund balance. And then highlighted down towards the bottom, it says all capital requests, pages 122 to 124. I put that in there. It has not only the CIP, but it has what we call the capital outlay, the smaller items for machinery equipment. And then down below at the bottom is capital items that requested, but they're not in the budget yet. They're on standby. Getting into the budget document, some of the big numbers here, the total city budget and 5 largest funds. We've got the total city budget on the left side there, $62,877,000 at 2021. Going across, comparing it to 2020, 64 million, it's a $1.1 million decrease, a 1.77% decrease. The main reason for the decrease is there's some larger capital items that were in 2020 that are not in 2021. And then going down, I always like to look at the, the 5 largest funds, which make up 90% of the budget. We have 30 funds in the budget, but these are the 5 largest funds. Of course, the general fund with a budget of $26,663,000, which is 42% of the budget. Last year was $26,014,000, an increase of $648,000 or 2.49%. Water and sewer fund, $18.8 million, 30% of the budget. Last year was $20.1 million. It was a decrease of almost $1.3 million, and that's because of some capital projects that were in the previous year. Sanitation fund, $6.2 million this year, 9.94% of the budget. Last year was $5.4 million, so it's at an increase of $828,000. Stormwater fund, $1.7 million, 2.8% of the budget. Last year was $3.6 million. It went down almost $1.9 million. The main reason is we've got in this current fiscal year 2020, the gross budget of over $2 million. And in the penny fund, we've got almost $3.3 million budgeted, 5.21% of the budget. Last year is $2.4 million at $835,000 increase. Now I just want to mention the $3,277,000 budget in the penny fund includes $1.4 million that has not been earmarked for anything yet. So those are the 5 largest funds of the city. And some of the major assumptions in the budget: pay increases for all employees funded at 3%. And as you know, the health insurance premium came in at a 2% decrease. Dental insurance came in at a 0.8% decrease. Police and fire pensions are funded at the actual required contribution. General pension is at 8.7%. It's a defined contribution plan, whereas a police and fire is a defined benefit plan. Workers' compensation is budgeted at 10% increase. We don't have the final rates yet, so that's still to be determined what they will be. Property insurance, just like workers' comp, we don't have what the cost is going to be yet, so we budgeted an estimate of a 10% increase. Getting into the general fund, and I just want to mention before, I know we mentioned some of these numbers just on the previous slide, but initially when we started working on the general fund, it had no pay increases. It was tight trying to budget the fund, the pandemic and everything. We had the departments go in and cut quite a bit of operating out of their budgets. And we also kept the previous years, we kept it really basically to previous year's levels, the current year, and limited capital. But then, when we had the health insurance decrease, and the original budget had property values going up just 4.5%, but then we found out from the property appraiser, the values went up 6.16%. So between the health insurance decrease and the property values going up, we were able to provide the pay increase in the budget funded at 3%, and also have some money left over available on reserve. So but getting to the screen here, I just wanted to mention that it's sort of the history of where we're coming back from April and May. Like I say, the budget, I've basically gone over these numbers already. It's gone up 648,000. But the main reason for the increase is a pay increase. We do have a new internal auditor position and some paramedics that were under the SAFER grant. The SAFER grant expired this current year, so we're no longer getting any funding from FEMA on the SAFER grant. And just to go over the general fund revenues by type, highlighted in yellow on the bottom right, taxes are the biggest portion of the revenues, 54%. Coming in next is the charges for services at 3.1 million, and then intergovernmental revenues at 2.8. General fund expenditures by function, and down on the bottom right, you see public safety is the biggest expense, 57%, 15.2 million. And then you've got general government at 4.6 million, and then cultural recreation at 4 million. Then if you look at the expenditures by type, and as you can see in the bottom right, personnel services are 74% of the budget. Coming in second is operating services at almost 6.4 million or 24%. The revenue projections, property taxes, like as I mentioned, 6.16 increase in taxable values. The millage rate is maintained at 5.37, and the total property tax revenues is $10,232,123, and that's 38% of the general fund revenues. And just to go into a couple of the other larger revenues we have, utility tax and franchise fees, I projected at 2%. A lot of the revenues I projected right around 2%, but from what I'm finding out, and I know from Mr. Smith, we found out tonight that somebody actually was looking at our, from Duke Energy, our presentation tonight. And, you know, then the franchise agreement for Duke is up for, we're renewing it right now for another, we're hoping maybe 15 years. So the franchise fee might be a little bit more, but we just want to wait until we get the new agreement signed to find out. But so we might have a little bit more revenue under the electric franchise fee. EMS, fire, and school officer fees based on the contracts with the county and school board. And sales taxes for our two that are in the general fund are the half-cent sales tax and the revenue sharing, where we project a 7.5% decrease with those. I always like to show this screen every year. It shows the composition of the property tax over the, you know, we're going back to 2007 here. And as you can see, 2011, we went up to 5.45. Have had decreases since then. We went to 5.42 about 2017. And then about 2020, we went down to 5.37. And then next as the taxable values, you can see back in 2008, before the Great Recession, we were up almost close to 2 billion in taxable values. Great Recession comes, as they call it the Great Recession. Then it goes down to a low of almost 1.3 billion in 2013. And then since we've been going back up in 2021, we broke 2 billion for the first time. We're at that 2.034 billion. And the graph on the bottom, that's the composition. You take the millage rate times the taxable values and you get the ad valorem revenues. And as you can see, back in 2007, we were at 8.1 million, dipped down to 6.7 million in 2013. And then this current year in the general fund budget, we're at 10,232,000. We'd like to compare the city of Tarpon to what we call the other full service cities with populations greater than 20. Full service, we're saying that they got police, they have fire, cultural, recreation. And as you can see, what I'm comparing in the blue bars is the current rate for 2020. Then going back to 2014 in the red bars. And as you can see, we're highlighted at the top there, 5.37. We are currently the lowest millage rate of the cities with a population, full service cities with population greater than 20,000. We've actually decreased our millage in the last 6 years. So it's Pinellas Park, but Largo went up, Clearwater went up. St. Pete has sort of held the same at the top of the county here at their 6.75. And just briefly going over the CIPs, when I say that in the CIP, there's 7,059,558. And just breaking it out, the physical environment highlighted in yellow is 69% of the budget. Most of this, 4.6 million, is from the water and sewer fund. Like as mentioned earlier, the executive summary book has a lot of good information on the CIP budget. Budget pages 101 to 126. 106, 107 has a CIP summary with everything. And as I mentioned previously, 108 through 121 has each fund. Pages 122, 124 has all capital, including capital outlays. Between the two, they total 9.9 million. And pages 125, 126 has capital requested, but not in the budget, but to be prioritized if funding becomes available. And just to show some of the larger projects in the CIP. We've got water and sewer fund, water pipe valve replacement, 500,000, manhole sewer lines, 250,000, force main improvements, 250,000. From the penny fund, we've got roadway reconfiguration for Walmart Huey, which is grant funded by FDOT, that's 750,000. Police vehicles, 400,000. Body cameras, 212,958. Brick Street and road reconstruction, 150,000. And from the capital project fund, we've got annual street paving and sidewalks, 250,000. And so those projects there are 2.7 million of the $7.1 million CIP budget. And just briefly on the CRA, you all probably know this, but it's created under Florida statutes, established in 2001, expires after 30 years. As you can tell from here's 2001, we've got like 10 years left on the CRA. And you all probably know the area. Alternate 19 from here is the Sponge Docks and basically 1 or 2 blocks east and west of alternate 19. Back in 2000, the taxable value for the CRA was 41 million. And taxable values over the base year, both the city and the county go into the CRA, and it's called tax increment financing. And the CRA revenue for this current year, basically the same. 279,000 will come from the city and 279,000 bill the county, and they send us a check for their portion. CRA expenditures for 2021, and I highlighted over to the left the reserve for capital at 215,000. That's the biggest portion, but it's not earmarked for anything yet. And really, with that 215,000, there's still 500,000 in fund balance, so there's roughly about 715,000 available in the CRA fund. After that, there's personnel services, $107,000. And then there's a loan repayment, $100,000, and that will be the last payment on that loan. And just to briefly go over the enterprise funds, 2021 budget, 18.8 million. Last year was 20.1 million. It went down 1.3, basically because the capital went down because of 2 larger projects, a new water well project and Seabreeze Drive sewer. Water and sewer revenues by type, 93%, 17.5 million is charges for services. Those are mostly your water and sewer fees and some reclaim fees. Reclaims usually only about $400,000. The expenses of the water and sewer fund, the largest one is 31%, 5.8 million. Personnel services. Operating services comes in second at 4.8 million. Capital outlay, 4.7 million. A little bit about the sanitation fund. It's the 3rd largest fund, 6.2 million. A budget this year of 6.2 million. Last year was 5.4 million. It's an increase of 828,000. Most of the increase is due to the contract with the Corps and some capital requirements for the new scale house and relocating, and with the Mears Boulevard connection to the Yardways facility. Sanitation revenues, it's like I say, it's another enterprise fund, so it's charges for services, 5.9 million, 95% is charged for services. That's your refuse and recycling fees. Sanitation fund expenses, I'd say 79%, 12.9 million is for operating services, and that's what's paid to the contractor to haul the garbage, refuse, and recycling away. A little bit about stormwater fund, 5th largest fund in the city, 1.8 million. It receives fees of 1.7 million. The majority of expenses are for personnel and operating. There's no capital in the stormwater this fund because it's basically been eaten up by once we get the Pent Groves project going. Golf course fund has a budget of 1.4 million. Basically, as you know, golf course fees pay for personnel and operating costs of the golf course. You know, the golf course was down for 30 some days back in with the pandemic, closed down, but from what I hear, what was some good news, in June they had one of their best June months of revenue in a long time. The Marina Fund has a budget of 112,000. Say marina fees pay a majority of which are slip rentals, which pay for personnel and operating costs of the marina. And what I see is a big help for the marina is a rate increase that was approved back in December. I'm thinking what it looked like that The marina fees will now cover operating expenses because the last couple of years, the revenues have not been enough to cover the expenses, and the fund balance has been decreasing about $20,000 a year. And my last slide is just the budget process timetable. Tonight, first budget workshop, August 18th, second budget workshop if necessary, August 24th, third budget workshop if necessary. August 24th, trim notices are mailed by property appraiser. September 3rd, I think it's a Thursday, that would be the first public hearing on the tentative millage and tentative budget. And then September 15th, a Tuesday, would be the second and final public hearing. And then October 1st would be the first day of the new year. And with that, that's my presentation. If you got any questions.
Mr. Herrick, I want to thank you. I want to thank Mr. Licouris and all the staff and all the members of the Budget Advisory Committee. We have a very good balanced budget again this year without using any emergency funds and keeping the same millage, as you said, 5.37, and be the lowest in the area, and still have a full service city, which is very important to all of us here in Tarpon Springs. I want to thank you again, and I want to thank everybody else involved with that. I have a couple questions that I'd like to ask you. The first question that I have is in benefit to the audience. What is the unassigned fund that we have?
Well, the unassigned fund balance is basically, in the general fund, is money left over after all other expenditures. It's basically savings, money that's unencumbered. It's available for whatever you want in the general fund. It's money left over.
And how much money do we have?
Well, currently 8.8 million. Now, we don't know with the pandemic and how the sales tax revenues are going to come out this year. You know, I know I projected it might go down 8.5, but you never know. Maybe the revenues won't be so bad. Maybe they'll come in, but you know, maybe we're offsetting it. We've been trying to cut the expenditures and watch our expenditures this year. So yeah, maybe we'll keep it around there.
This is the fund that we use to actually help the local businesses affected by the pandemic. So what is the requirement of the unassigned fund? Just so the people would know.
Well, we have a 20% fund balance requirement. So it's 20% of the operating expenditures. So right now, the minimum at 20% is right around a little under $5 million.
So we're about $3.8 million over we should have had. So we did good. Thank you. The other question that I have is the penny for Pinellas, which is a sales tax. Are we expecting to see any decrease due to the pandemic crisis?
Yes, we've already been seeing a decrease this year. We started to track it. The first receipts were in May, where we started to see it decline. We're down about, I think it's about 100, maybe about 150,000 right now. So yes, we are seeing a decline in our penny sales tax monies.
So are we going to adjust that periodically? Adjust our budget periodically?
Yes, we've been sort of trying to take that into account as we go along here, trying to attack, okay, we've got these less revenues coming in, we need to adjust our budget. Yes.
Thank you. That's all I have. I'd like to, are there any commission comments on the presentation? Vice Mayor Carr?
Thanks, Mayor. If you could just help me understand the flow of the meeting tonight.
Well, we have, yes. First, we have the proposed budget, which was just in the presentation, which was done by Mr. Herrick. Then I will ask the chair of the Budget Advisory Committee to be on, to give us his recommendations from the committee. Then we're going to go to the general fund. After that, CIP and CRA, if Tom is permitted.
Okay, so I've got some question about debt. Should I ask that now or in the general?
Questions about general fund? That'll be next.
Well, it's not general fund. It's actually like water and sewer fund.
Well, that will be enterprise fund. I don't think we're going to cover that today.
Okay.
Do you have any comments on the presentation?
Yeah, Ron, you mentioned that there's $1.4 million in the penny fund that isn't allocated yet. Is there anything in the general fund that's not allocated based on the budget presented?
Yes, we have some money based on, when we're saying the budget initially, and then we saw health insurance decrease and we got a little bit more money on the property taxes. We have about 247,000 available, if that's what you mean. That's currently available for projects.
Okay. Is there anything else that we should be aware of available for projects other than the penny fund and general fund?
Well, you've also, if something was applicable for, impact funds, you could charge it. There are some, like water and sewer impact funds.
Okay, or recreation funds, I guess.
Recreation funds, we're down about $50,000 right now, so.
Okay. All right, I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Terrapini?
Thank you, Mayor. Ron, I really appreciate your presentation. I remember a number of years ago when Ari finally decided to retire, and you took the reins, and to me it was a little bit of a breath of fresh air. So I'm always appreciative every budget cycle of you and your presentation and how you control the city, so to speak. I did notice in your presentation, or at least in the budget, it looks like you've kind of tweaked it in such a way to where you've added some definitions and some meanings ahead of certain slides and pages in the budget, which I think is kind of nice. I haven't noticed that in years past. I did have just a couple of questions off the bat as observations before we get into the meat of the discussion. On the water and sewer fund, I see this year's 18 million and change. What do you recall what that would have looked like about 5 years ago?
Well, it would depend on the capital projects. I don't have it 5 years ago.
I'm saying the budget for the water and sewer fund.
The basic total budget.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Offhand, I like to give exact numbers, but 15 million is coming to mind here.
Okay. And what do you attribute that increase to?
It's mostly been in the capital projects and that hadn't been done. And plus, the water plant started in 2015, came online.
Mm-hmm. And what is that? And what is there any relation to the revenue? Has our water revenue increased?
Yes. Well, we've had the 10-year rate increases, and which the one that expired just, I think, 2 years ago. Now we're at the rate increases where we went down from what we were before. We went to a 4% rate increase. This year was 2.75. And the current plan is 2.75% for the next, I think, until 2028.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think most everything else I have, I guess I'll hold until we start talking about the budgets aside from just the presentation. So I appreciate your presentation tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Donovan?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Ron, for the detailed presentation. I think I'll save most of my comments moving forward. For the proposed budget assumptions, like for an insurance decrease, for example, how does that work from your end, just handling the budget? Once you realize that we're not going to spend as much money as on insurance, where does that kind of money go?
Where does it
saving,
go?
I guess. Yeah.
Well, in this case, it helped to pay for the pay increases. We had originally budgeted a 10% increase. We didn't know what it was going to come to. And then when we found out it was going to go down 2%, we had about a $500,000 swing. We had a $400,000 increase in health insurance and dental. And then it went down to like a $100,000 decrease. So we had about a $500,000 swing there on the health insurance. And then plus the property taxes, my original budget estimate was a 4.5% increase, but it ended up being 6.16% increase. So that was another about 180,000 there.
Okay. Another thing I think would be neat to see in future presentations, or maybe at one of our upcoming work sessions, would just be able to give the staff a chance to kind of brag about, how they did some of their savings or how they saved budget money. I know you mentioned that they had made sacrifices in their own budgets, just knowing that, due to the pandemic and everything, it's going to be a tighter year. Something that comes to mind for me would be like our IT department and us building the website, our new website from within. That saved us nearly $100,000 from, without having to go to a consultant or something like that. So that's stuff that's always really nice to see. And I think if we can, brag or present about anything that our staff did other than that to really make a difference in the budget, I think that'd be nice. I don't have any more questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Vaticiotis?
Thanks, Mayor. Ron, actually, this is my first time around, and some things changed from a long time ago. In the CIP, in your presentation, and in the book, the thin book, the executive summary, I don't see anything for sanitation or stormwater in the capital improvement program in the 5-year plan. Am I missing it, or is it in there? I don't see it.
The stormwater is on page 119.
Page 119?
Yeah.
All right, and the sanitation?
The sanitation is not in there,
Okay,
but we do have a separate section a little earlier on with the sanitation back on
106.
okay. All right. I think I'm okay on the presentation, except for one last question. The justification that you say is the detail. Is that correct? After in the large book, the three ring binder, that's the detail after the revenue and just kind of going through the line item. And then you've got the individuals by their own salaries and things. Is that what you mean by the justification?
Yeah, the detail, the big 3-ring binder, it's a combination of 4 reports. It's the revenue reports, expenditure line item reports, and then justifications, which are justifications of those expenditure line items. And then there's a personnel payroll page, which shows the positions, their salary, their benefits, and the total cost of that position, if that's what you're.
That's fine. Thank you. That's it, Mayor.
Thank you. I now like to invite the chairman of the Budget Advisory Committee, the former Vice Mayor, David Panther, to comment and to provide us with any recommendations that the Budget Advisory Committee might have. Mr. Davis, Mr. Dave Panther, are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me or no?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Okay. Make sure there's no video on this. Hold on. Okay, great. Yes, we only have one recommendation, one official motion, but it relates to the enterprise fund. So I'm not sure if y'all wanted that, at this time.
Sure, go ahead and let us have it.
Okay, well, first off, thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, for allowing us to, serve for you. We have a great diverse board of professionals that, has met starting in the spring and through the summer, and has advised on the budget. We got to meet with all the department heads, and they gave us some great recommendations, and we gave them some great thoughts, and all were receptive to our responses. So thank you for that, and staff, especially Ron and Michelle. As far as the enterprise funds go, I believe Vice Mayor Carr asked us to look into the administrative charges that are part of the enterprise funds. Upon reviewing those, the process, and talking to Ron Herring, we did not see any issues on like our end. So we made a simple request. I'm not sure if it ever made it back to Vice Mayor Carr, is that if he has some more specific examples of some concerns he has as it relates to admin charges, we'd be happy to review that further. But we don't have any specific concerns on at this time. So that was our only official motion of the of our meetings. Everything else we were in agreement with on the budget. We think it's a sound budget. Again, while no motion or consensus was taken as to the millage rate, I believe the board is in support of keeping the millage rate as is, and is in support of the current budget. And we're obviously impressed that there's no use of the reserve fund at this time. So I'm open to any questions.
Mr. Panther, I don't have any questions, but I want to take this opportunity to thank you for your service. Also, I want to thank all the members of the Budget Advisory Committee for their hard work, the dedication, and for working so hard to analyze each line item of the budget and make it so much easier for us to review and to approve the budget for 2021. Again, thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Carr, do you have any comments in regards
No,
to?
other than just thank you very much for your service and your volunteering, your time, and the rest of the board too. So thank you for your help.
Thank you.
Commissioner Terrapini?
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I would just say the same, just echo my thanks to Mr. Banther and also the entire board. Certainly appreciate him sharing the board, and I do agree. I think this is one of our best budget advisory groups in terms of diversity and professionalism, just knowing what I know about the group. So I'm appreciative of their service and look forward to them staying involved throughout this process.
Thank you.
Commissioner Donovan?
No questions from me. Just thank you and the rest of the Budget Advisory Board. Really appreciate all the work you do.
Thank you.
Commissioner Vaticius?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Banther and the rest of the committee for reviewing the budget. I just had one comment, and actually it's related to Mr. Banther's comment on the enterprise fund transfers.
Mhm.
We're going to get to that, not this evening, right? Because I have some questions on that as well. And I'm hoping Vice Mayor Carr is certainly not going to be discouraged from making his comments at the appropriate time as well. Is that correct? We're going to address the enterprise funds transfers at a later date, or we're going to discuss it in the revenue section tonight?
The enterprise fund's probably going to be in the next workshop.
Okay, including
There-
the enterprise fund transfers are part of the revenue for the general fund. And I think that's what Vice Mayor Carr was getting at. And I don't have a problem waiting until the enterprise funds, because it's in that as well as far as a transfer back to the general fund. And I think we've got a full plate tonight with just going over the general fund without
Yeah.
getting into the enterprise fund transfers. So
We probably better off to wait till the next meeting,
thank you.
since we have so much to cover today on the general fund.
Got it. Thank
And also, I'd like to, for us to be able to cover the CIP as well tonight, if it's possible.
Okay.
If you all agree with that.
Mayor, do we have a time frame for this evening? Are we going to go all the way until 11 o'clock? Or
Well,
keep it more of
every
a
meeting we
traditional,
have,
like,
is to 11, but if you want to set a time limit, that's fine with me.
I would make a motion to that effect for sure.
7:30.
That's, I mean, don't make me tell you how I really feel. I mean, I would be
I
comfortable going
agree. I
until
don't want to go to
9:30.
11. I don't want to go to 11 o'clock because we're talking about dollars and cents of cities.
Right.
And quite frankly, after a certain amount of time, let's say 9 or 9:30, I begin to get a little sketchy as far as my thoughts go. So
I don't see any reason for us in a workshop to go past 9 o'clock.
Okay, so
I move that this motion or this meeting shall adjourn on or before 9 p.m. tonight.
9 p.m. tonight, okay. Do we have a second for that?
Yes.
Yes,
Second.
okay. Ms.
We can
Jacobs,
just
are you
do it.
there?
We can just.
I am.
Okay, and roll call, please.
Commissioner Vaticiotis,
yes.
Commissioner Donovan,
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Carr,
Yes.
Mayor LaHousas.
Yes, thank you.
Feel much better about it.
Okay, well, we're now going to the item number 1, which is the general fund. First, I'd like to say that I'm very pleased that we're keeping the same millage of the 5.37. And also, I'm very pleased that the health insurance that we discussed Tuesday night, which is the number 1 benefit of our employees, we have a 2% reduction. Marketing, which is so important to our local economy, especially now with the pandemic crisis. Mr. Licouris, do you have, can you tell us what marketing campaign plans do you have this year?
If Karen Lemon's on here, I'd rather have her talk to him because she's the one that's been working on them. Karen, there she is.
Hi, yes, thank you for the question. We intend to continue with our Explore Tarpon Springs campaign. We currently have, as you know, our Rediscover campaign is in process. The television ads and we've had some newspaper ads and social media. The pandemic has taken a little longer than I think many of us have expected, but our plans are to start at a later date again with the Explore, probably looking at September, and piggybacking on those efforts that we've done in the past, continuing the billboard, continuing the social media, continuing the television and newspaper ads. We made the video from our previous video that we've had. We've been running those ads both on television and on, they pop up in your digital feeds. So those are many of the items that we expect to continue moving forward.
Thank you. Mrs. Lemons, the money that we allocated on this budget for marketing, is that enough for you to perform the marketing that you want?
Yes, we've been using that additional, I think it's been 30 or 35,000. And we've been fortunate to have the Merchants Association split costs with us on many of those items. So we've been able to work within those budgets, yes.
Thank you. What about the Chamber of Commerce? Are they involved with that?
They're involved not from a financial standpoint. And as you know, the Fine Arts Festival gave a big hit to them. So I don't see them financially assisting, but they have been helping us with getting the word out and social media and other in-kind types of things that they can help with.
Thank you. Are there any commission comments or any questions I'd like to ask Ms. Lemons on that issue, marketing? Anyone?
I've got a couple.
Go ahead.
From a economic development, I appreciate what you did this year with city manager, with the small business grants and other aspects, and the finance department helping out with that. I think you all did a great job in that aspect. Moving forward into 2021, we have a lot of large properties that are in dire need of redevelopment or development. Is there any goals from the economic development department to market these throughout to developers outside of this Tarpon Springs area?
Yeah, I mean, that's been an ongoing project for us, both with vacant parcels and with a lot of the infill parcels, you know, along up and down Alt 19, there's a lot of parcels that are underdeveloped and not particularly vacant. The Manatee Plaza, as you know, is now for sale, and we've been getting a lot of inquiries on that project. So we're heartened by that. But yeah, we use LoopNet, CoStar. We continue to work with not only our local developers, but regional as well. Attending the ICSC and all of the FEDC and all the conferences. Obviously, right now there aren't any, but there's a lot of virtual meetings that we've been having with our regional partners and statewide economic development partners. So we're continuing that. We're also doing a survey of our businesses that we're using for assistance from the pandemic. What they learned from it, were they prepared, were they not, did they lay off people? What are some things that could help them moving forward if and when something like this happen again? So we've been working on those efforts as well.
Okay, from a funding standpoint, do you feel that you have funds available to market these redevelopment opportunities in the city of Tarpon Springs to like either statewide or national developers to look at?
Yeah, because we can create those brochures and you know, you don't really mail things out anymore. So it's email and putting them out online. So that's worked very well. So yeah, I think we've got the money that we need, and we've been using Constant Contact and a lot of those other platforms for doing surveys and things. So it isn't anything that has any additional costs at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other commission comments on this issue, on this item on marketing?
I have one, Mayor.
Sure, go ahead, Commissioner Terrapini.
Thanks. Karen, thanks for your hard work and what you do, and definitely a challenging time now for businesses. Do you feel that, and this is a similar question kind of to Commissioner Carr's, do you feel that the money that was budgeted last year and that you spent was well spent? And then also, if your resources were unlimited and you had more funds to spend, where would you focus?
Yeah, I think we were able to use the dollars very effectively that we had last year. And we're going to continue to do that this year. If things were unlimited, I'd like to see more studies to be able to be done, that we could reach out further with some professional consultants to do some perhaps some additional work. We had talked about the CRA plan update. I'd love to see something like that being done. Just some data research that we're not able to do here. We've reached out to Pinellas County to help with some data, but that's all going to be new and different now with the pandemic hitting. What kinds of trends we're going to see moving forward. We've been talking a lot about our residential apartments, townhomes, condos, single family homes, looking at potential foreclosures and what's going to happen moving forward with people. So, the trends are kind of the things that we're looking at and trying to figure out, how to plan for when we get some kind of new normal or normal back again.
Thanks. So if you had unlimited funds, you'd spend them on consultants to give us a better idea of what you think we should be doing.
Well, I'd like to see some of that done. Yes.
Interesting answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Donovan, do you have questions on that or comments?
Yeah, real quick, I just want to say thank you, Ms. Lemons, for all that you do. I know this is probably the most unique situation any economic development manager has found themselves in. I know it's been tough. I just had questions in terms of that survey you had mentioned. I just want to know when that was going to go out and how we were trying to reach people.
Yeah, we've had it out now for a couple months, and I keep putting it out. I'll have the information shortly. Every time I send it out, we get responses, but then there's no follow-up. So I'll be able to have something on that shortly.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Teixeira, any questions or comments on that?
Well,
Marketing?
just one silly one, or may I just ask, why are we talking about marketing?
Why are we talking about marketing? Because I feel like it's very, very important to our economy.
We're not going to go through the budget just item by item, or we're going to.
Well, this is the things, each commissioner has his own, probably his own issues and items and questions he wants to have.
All right.
If you're not interested in marketing, you don't have to comment.
No, no, that's fine. I mean, I'm not sure how we're going to get to point B with point A if we keep hopping around, but that's fine. There's no problem. I don't have any questions. Thank you, Ms. Lemon.
Thank you. My next question is on the hotel tax. What can we do to receive some of the hotel tax that it goes to Pinellas County? I brought that up last year. Also, Vice Mayor Carr did as well. Is there any way that we can go to Pinellas County and see if we can receive some of the taxes that they're getting?
Well, the bed tax is a whole different issue in terms of how that's distributed throughout each community. We don't have any large hotels, so that's, we get back whatever percentage of our hotel population is. But if you're talking about the other types of funds that are funded through the bed tax, it funds Visit St. Pete Clearwater, Convention and Visitors Bureau, and it funds some of those other grants that put on festivals and events. And as you know, we've talked about that in the past. Our festivals and events don't have the reach and the population and the requirements that to date that those grant requirements allow for. they all have to be paid events. You need to show your number of bed taxes. You need to show the number of visitors coming from out of state. They're for the larger events. So that's why we haven't had any of those types of grants coming to us at this point.
One of the subjects that we talked last year about that, it was the Epiphany celebration. We we have at least 20,000 people coming to Tarpon Springs, and that should be large enough to qualify for something like that. Would you think?
Yes, but again, that's not a paid event. It's a free event. So one of those criteria is that it's a paid event.
Okay. Vice Mayor Carr, you had a question on that last year. Do you want to comment on that? It has something to do with the Anclo River.
Yeah, I remember talking to I think the chair at the time of the Pinellas bed tax, and they looked into if dredging was available for the river funds, and the backup said it was, and their whatever the pamphlet says or talks about it, but then they reached out to their attorney and they said they couldn't allocate the funds to a dredge project. I do have some, I would like that to be a goal for 2021 to figure out how to capture some of these hotel bed taxes for Tarpon Springs. I believe the economic study that the Pinellas County helped pay for the dredge said that Tarpon Springs produces $400,000 a year in hotel bed tax. I know that's not equivalent to like a Clearwater Beach string of hotels with like a ton of visitors that stay out there. But I think that's at least, it's something, right? So if there's something that we can do to capture a little bit of that back, I'm happy to go meet with whoever we need to meet with to ask and request it. It might be good just to start off with getting us their pamphlet of what they actually will fund in a little more detail than just like a high level for events, to figure out how we could utilize that maybe for additional marketing expenses or just even projects in our city.
Thank you. Are there any other commission comments on this hotel tax?
Yeah, Mayor, I've got one. I just wanted to say to the mayor and vice mayor, thank you for bringing this up. I think it's really important, and whether it's sending a letter or speaking to the county, happy to support it in any way I can.
Thank you. Any other comments? Any other commission comments? Here none. Thank you, Ms. Lemons.
Thank you.
The next item I want to talk about is the paid increase. We budgeted 3% increase for all the employees. When I was first elected as a commission back in 2007, we had a problem keeping employees because the salaries were very low. Over the years, the salaries have been improved. Mr. Licouris, when was the last time we had a survey done for all the positions, for all the employee positions, including directors and also the charter employees, to see how can we compare the salaries to the other cities?
It's been several years, but what we've done since we've done that study is we've kept up with all the cities and what their changes are so we can keep up with it. So we are pretty convinced that we've kept up. We've followed the other cities every year that we've done the study, and we've done the appropriate raises. Now that's far as total, the total. Whether some individual positions or there may be some differences in looking at some of the positions and that have branched out from it, maybe from other places. That may be the only thing we are lacking, but as a whole, we're keeping up with the rest of the county. But again, there may be individual positions or group positions that we could have got behind on.
Is there any way that you can provide us that information for the next budget workshop so we can discuss it?
Well, that item about salaries, that's on the next one. I don't know if we can look at it real fast, but a turnaround to Tuesday on something as complex as that. But we can look. If you remember before, we were helped greatly because the Florida League of Cities did a salary survey every year, and we had the advantage of having the salaries of all over the state. And I think that ended in 2015 or 16, which really hampered us really keeping individually, not group wise of the city and the salary ranges. It really hampered us because that was a great tool to look all over the state of places our size, places in our area, and see a comparison. So we can do a quick look to see and what we'd be looking for if we can see anything that's gone kind of out of whack. But those studies take months and months to do, even to do in-house. Like that was another thing back 2015, whenever we did it. Another city did the study for $60,000 and we did it in-house for nothing and have kept up with it since. So we can look and see if we can tell just from what we can see, if we see any positions that may be that way. But you know, a whole study takes months.
Well, isn't it next week that we're going to be talking about salaries?
Tuesday,
next Tuesday, brother. Right?
Yes.
So yeah, that'll be very useful, I think. Thank you very much. On page 68, which is the Public Works.
Mayor, I have a question on salaries. I mean,
Oh,
we're
sure,
gonna-
go ahead. Yeah, of course.
I sent you a memorandum on the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, and it's going to be about 2%, or at least that's what it's been running. And there's some wiggle room in that. And I've noticed, just a general comment in going through the departments, and I think the city manager and the finance staff has done an excellent job of keeping the cost down in order to come in line with our projected revenues. So I don't have any issue with that. The only question I have, and that's why I was hoping we'd get to either some of the departments are pretty much flat, which in some of those departments are very important to us, like roads and streets and the buildings maintenance and things where their budgets are flat, yet the personnel are getting a 3% raise, which is fine, except it's at the expense of not doing some of the things that I think should be done. And I just want to make sure that whatever we do with this budget, it's balanced between both salaries and what we provide the residents. And that's why I've got some questions on some of these departments in that regard. So I don't necessarily have a problem with 3%. Last year, 3% was justified because the CPI came in at about that level. This year, it's not coming in at that. And this whole matter of salaries is all recurring costs. We're going to be paying for that from now on. So I really think it's a good idea to do some kind of a salary review, as you described, Mayor. But I also think that there's some, I don't want to call them issues, but some questions I have as far as making sure that the employees are taken care of, but also making sure that our basic needs are being accommodated as well in this budget. Thank you. And I'll wait till we get till next Tuesday night on specific things. But if we start hitting on these departments tonight, I've got some specific questions in that regard too.
Thank you. Well, that will be very useful information to have during the next meeting. Any other commission comments? No. Okay. I have some small items that we'd like to include to the general fund expenditures with consensus of the board, of course. As we all know, in Tarpon Springs, a large percentage of our population are seniors. And I think I discussed that in one of the meetings several months ago, that we need to have a senior center. And talking to Mr. LaCourse, he believes that there's an area in the community center we can actually use, but we need about $30,000 to make that happen. So I like to include that to the budget this year. That will be part of the Public Works, $30,000 for the senior center, will be part of our the community center. I believe our seniors deserve that. Mr. Licouris, do you want to comment about what do you think we should do with what kind of enhancement we need to do to this area there?
The plans that we're looking at is taking an area of the center and we probably make offices. It'd probably be a public works office with possibly offices and rearranging the room and the area we'd go by. I gave you the third, that's kind of a rough estimate of Tom Function about what we may be able to do over there to get us started. So I know there was talk about a different building, a different place or doing anything, but I think we've learned from the library with it being there that, we would be able to accommodate. Plus the recreation is working. One of the things they've been working on since we began with seniors is working on more programs for seniors within the community center. So you're going to see a lot more when the pandemic leaves, a lot more activities and different things geared strictly to seniors. That's one of the major reasons why the dance classes were given an amount of time and told to find their own places, because they were occupying a lot of the areas, and we were going to have senior programming and other programming for kids that are coming in there and stuff. So that's what we're looking for, and probably it's just a lot of in-house building type things, maybe making an office out of a bigger area with a conference room there. So it'd be all, done by our staff and materials and stuff to do. So, we think at least 30,000 would cover it. If that's what you're looking for to do and
Yes.
move from the library and do the community center in conjunction with the activities and additional classes and things we're doing there, then that's what we think the best and most economic way to do it would be.
Well, what I'm looking is for a place where the seniors can actually gather and getting information plus socializing. Every city has that. I know in Dunedin has a huge place on Douglas Avenue. I think it's going to work perfectly in the community center. We have the recreation area and many other programs that are already in place, so they can participate. Are there any commission comments on that?
I've got a couple just on how we're going to run the meeting real quick, Mayor. I've got where are you suggesting that the funds would come from for the senior center?
There are some extra money in the general fund that will be available for that.
Okay.
Mr. Licouris, can you help with this?
Yeah, I think
Mr. Herrick?
Ron Herring told you about the $240,000 that is open money in there for, that we try to give and not commit. Remember, anything you say tonight also besides that 240, if there are items that goes over that, we go back before the next budget meeting and look if there's any areas we can enhance that from what's in the budget now. So I think you're talking about, and usually like last year or the years past, Ron will keep a running list and he'll have his 240 or whatever it is. And if you say 30,000 here, then he'll do an additional list down. If that money gets committed, then it's up to us to come back for the next meeting on consensus items and see if we can find it and let you know where it may fit in the budget, or if you want us to cut something to put your item into the budget. That's the way we've done it in the past.
Okay. Mayor, can you just help me understand what a senior center is? Is it like an alternative to like going to the coffee shop and hanging out? It's an area where seniors would be able to go to, or I wouldn't be allowed because I'm in my 30s.
Well, it's not really a coffee shop type environment. It's a place that actually, yes, they go there and socialize, but also a place where they can, they have different, different information, different speakers will go there to talk to them, and different ways to stay healthy and all.
Okay. And you feel like this is a demand in Tarpon Springs?
Well, we have a very large, very large percentage of our population is seniors.
Right.
And
okay. So, I mean, I'm happy to support a senior center. I think the community center is the best place to have it if there's going to be one. From like the budget standpoint, I mean, I've got a list of stuff that I would like to see included in the budget as well. And I know some other commissioners probably do as well too. And again, Mayor, I want to support you in this endeavor. I just want to know what's the most appropriate way to go ahead and list off the different things to try to rank them or come to a consensus of our different budget items or different budget ideas.
Well, then what we should do is we go ahead and, place our request, and then we can go prioritize all the other things to make sure that we have that with the $240,000 is enough money to cover all of them.
Okay. Should we send those to Mark, you think, to create a list, or what are your thoughts behind that?
Well, there are some things that are important and we need to discuss with that. And,
Usually, like, for instance, you're in the general fund. So this would be something that's general fund public works. So usually tonight, the different departments that you deal with whether it's public works, police, economic development. I remember last year before, that's where we added that extra marketing money is. So we would discuss those and we would list all those tonight. Whether you do it, go to the 5 of you and you do your list now, or as you go through the general fund budget, when you get the apartment like Karen's or somebody, by the way, in this department, this is one of the things I'd like to see added. That's usually up to, the mayor and the board to figure out what process you use to get Ron and I the list. So we see how much it is. And sometimes we don't have to prioritize it because if it's over, we can go back and before you, for instance, that Tuesday night's meeting, we can tell you where there's some areas where you get the money maybe, and, of changing something out that you think is more important stuff. So there's several ways to do it. Usually the different boards have done it different ways over the year. So
okay,
it's really your way of doing it.
And I just have one quick question. So the money is going to Public Works to do the project itself, or would it fall under recreation to actually run the senior center?
Well, what we probably need is, we're thinking, again, we haven't done this out, but we're thinking we need to build the office. We've got the volunteers that are in a room at the library. That's the one that helps the seniors answer the phone calls. They're coming with a problem. So we're probably just taking one of the side rooms. I think the one when you walk in and go to the far north, it would possibly make an office space within there and then have a conference area outside it. Again, we haven't gone into doing up plans and stuff for it, but it would be mostly Public Works going in there and doing a building type project to construct the area. Obviously, we got all the other areas, the gym, the big room, if we're doing talks, if we're doing dances for senior. I know we had a dance night for seniors in the bigger rooms, but as far as where the senior volunteers that we train and stuff, run their offices out of and meeting rooms or something for that. It'd be converting a present room to meet those needs and meet those office needs. For instance, seniors come in and are talking about a sensitive thing, an office to go in and close the door and do. We'd have to build that because there's no
Okay,
offices.
that's fine. No, that's fine. Thank you.
Any other comments on that?
I just have a suggestion, Mayor.
Sure.
Not so much on the senior center, but more so as it relates to some of this discretionary, spending we're talking about. I find that, in years past, if we go through the budget in its entirety, naturally there's going to be some things that we're going to redline or things that we're going to want to spend more money on. And then once we get to the end of the budget and we see where all the chips fall, I think at that point in time, it would be best if the commission suggests some areas that they'd like to spend some extra money on. But I think if we go through the budget in its entirety and then do that, that might be more productive. Just my thinking.
I'm okay with that. That's fine. We can do that. I guess the next budget or budget meeting or the following one.
Sure.
We could do it tonight.
Yeah, I just remember, we don't have a lot of time if we got to look and find other places between now and Tuesday, or if we go to the third meeting on Monday. So the sooner we get to those and we know what the scope of them is, how much we're talking about on different things, the sooner we know that, the sooner we can come back and put together what we can do for it.
Mayor, Commissioner Donovan, do you have anything? I don't want to interrupt, and I guess you would be next in line.
No, you're fine. I just, all I wanted to add was that I think it'd be best if we all identified some of those general fund projects that we as individual commissioners would like to see up front. That way staff could get a gauge of kind of, you know, how expansive or how non-expansive things are. And I don't want to craft, you know, I don't want to set the budget and then see what of our own ideas we can squeeze into it. I'd rather do it opposite. I'd rather get our ideas out there at the front end of it, and kind of see how the budget can work for us.
My thinking is you just might have more money to spend after you go through the budget. That's just my thinking.
Well, let's identify the ones we have now, and then we look and see if the money is available.
Mayor, I've already provided the city manager, and I think I copied you as well, not just you, but the other commissioners, as far as some of the things I was looking at for the sponge docks in the downtown. And that $247,000 amount is somewhat, it's not a real amount. There's some things that we've already approved in the last couple of meetings, BOC meetings, that are going to be deducted from that. Unless I'm mistaken, I don't believe I am, such as the internal auditor's salary. Is that correct, City Manager LaCouris?
Ron, I think, do you have that incorporated in, or how much do you have set aside for that?
It's 40,000 right now. I can answer that question.
There's nothing in the current budget, but I guess from what I was seeing, I didn't know if you'd be hiring a person before the September 30th. So in the current year, there's nothing budgeted, but on the budget we're working on, yes, there is money budgeted for an internal auditor.
The three-ring binder I have, Mr. Herring,
Yes,
has got $40,000 for the internal auditor salary.
I've got the position split, 55% general fund and 45% water and sewer. So the salary budgeted for next year is 77,000 in the three-ring binder.
All right. All right. I mean, this is going to be really interesting. I'm really having a hard time getting my arms around it. We've saved money on the health insurance. Some other things have come down. We've got a three-ring binder. Some of these things have been split apart. I think between Commissioner Terrapini and Commissioner Donovan, I think that's the best approach. I'm not ready to agree to any program tonight or any recommendation by any commissioner until we really find out what everybody wants. Because I mean, I've got some ideas, but there's no doubt that other commissioners are equally as important, and I may even be more than happy to cooperate in that regard. In other words, I might see that they're seeing something that I haven't that is much more important than what I've got. But I just don't want to start agreeing to 30,000 here and 15,000 there at this point until I see what everybody's got in mind. We may even have some duplication amongst ourselves as well.
Okay, well, I will go ahead and continue on what I was doing, and then we add up and see how much money is that going to be, and then we work on that.
Mayor, can I just make a quick point to Commissioner Vaticiotis?
Go ahead.
If you look at the executive book, it's page 48 and 49 and 50. It has the different positions that are split, and it gives their total salaries in there. Because if you go off the three-ring binder, it's difficult to actually come up with the individual salaries that way. And Ron did a good job a couple years ago. I think it was Vice Mayor Banther at that time had him put something together that shows the total salary split between the different funds. So it's a pretty good summary there.
Right, and I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is that in the past that I've sat in your budget meetings, we've not used the executive summary book. We've used the three-ring binder, and we've gone through department by department, revenues first and department to department, and each commissioner had questions on it, and each commissioner had suggestions of what's something they would like to see made part of that. And I assume that was the process this time. I've been through both books, and I don't particularly care for the executive summary because it's missing a whole lot of detailed information that I like to look at. But you know, and, you know, the internal auditor being split, I mean, I'd like to hear the justification for that, but tonight's not the night to do that. I mean, it plays back to your enterprise fund transfers. This is another way of transferring money out of the water and sewer account into the general fund. I don't recall the internal auditor's salary being split in the past, and maybe that would be something that Mr. Herring could enlighten me, or if anyone else is interested, maybe I can do that offline with him. But I think this is a very important effort that we're doing, and I fully appreciate the fact that we're under COVID right now, and it's hampered our efforts to get to this point. And I also know we're pressed for time because of the trim notice and also having a budget by in passing the resolutions or ordinances that we need to in order to have it in place by October 1st. I understand that. But I'm just, right now, it's just, I don't see as, I see as kind of like, you know, I'm the last man on the totem pole as far as commissioners. That's fine. But it's like, by the time it gets to me, it's going to be 9:25. That's the way I'm estimating based on.
So just a little bit of clarification. Over the past couple budget seasons since I've been on the board, we haven't gone through line by line item in detail. It's been more of a high level with the executive summary and a combination of the book. So I think we individually will call out the different line items that we're interested in, but we don't have to talk about each one to conserve time. And to be honest, there's really no reason to talk about each line item in our meeting tonight.
No.
Since we've all reviewed it. So
I don't mean line by line, department by department by Mayor Carr. That's what I was talking about. And I don't have a question on every department, but just some of them I do. And that's fine. I'll just go with what everybody else has got accustomed to, and we'll see where it leads tonight.
Okay. Well, the next thing that I want to make sure that it goes on the budget is, if everybody agrees to it, is a $3,000 donation to the Neighborly Care, which is Meals on Wheels. We did it last year as well. And another $3,000 contribution to the Homeless Leadership Alliance. This is the board that Commissioner Donovan is serving on. And also, just a month ago, we voted to go through the process to include 3 sister cities into our sister city program. So our city attorney is working to create a sister city program, a policy and procedure, as you remember. I think we should have $20,000 for the expenses for the 3 sister cities to be, to be part of our program. Now, the question is how it was financed in the past. A lot of the expenses were done here by nonprofit organizations. Also, all the expenses that I had going overseas and talking to different people, I paid that out of my pocket. So I don't expect the next person who is going to be involved with the sister city to have been paying that out of his or her pocket. So I think $20,000 to start off with will be enough for this program. I'd like to hear your ideas and your comments on that, please.
you're talking about on yours specifically?
Well, for all those 3 items that I mentioned, the $3,000 contribution to the Homeless Leadership Alliance, $3,000 to the Neighborly Care, which is the Meals on Wheels. And I say I'm very proud that periodically I do deliveries. And the $20,000 for the Sister City program.
Okay. I mean, I've got a couple thoughts on that. I'm happy to support Meals on Wheels. Again, these are just off the cuff discussions. I think we need to take everyone's discussions that we propose and come back and say yay or nay. Meals on Wheels I'm happy with. Homeless Leadership Board, I don't want to support them at all. They don't do anything in North County that I'm aware of. I'd rather give it to Safe Harbor or one of the organizations that we utilize with the police department. I think that would be a better option than giving it to a homeless leadership board who potentially fund their nonprofit organizations themselves. The Sister City program, 20,000 seems like a lot to me. I need to learn a little bit more about what that would look like. If we're paying the sister cities to come over to visit us, or if we're paying someone to go over there, if it's $5,000 once a year, or $3,700, whatever flights and hotels would be. So I need to understand those a little bit more. But I'm happy to support some type of funding for the Sister City program. But to come back around, Meals on Wheels, I think is a good idea. Homeless Leadership Board, no. And then Sister City program, yes, but not at $20,000.
How much do you think that will be needed for that?
Well, I guess I need to understand like the Sister City program itself, because
Okay.
if this coming budget season, I mean, if someone travels to Greece once a year to visit two of the cities, or you rotate each year to a different city, I mean, a flight with travel expenses for a week or a week and a half, it might be what, $7,000. I don't know. I think I need to understand a little bit more about what the Sister City program would actually look like.
City Attorney Trask is actually working on the Sister Cities program policy and procedure, and he's going to kind of look and see what they're doing in Dunedin for that. Keep in mind, a lot of the expenses that are on this program are paid from our pocket right now. So
Right.
this is why you never see a bill. You know, and I do not expect the next person to do that.
I agree with that statement, but I just think $20,000 is a bit extreme for that. And
Okay.
once we get more details, I'm happy to look at it further.
Well, we have 3 sister cities that we decided to welcome to our Sister City program, and someone has to go there to do the sign in. They'll come here, and then it's going to be expenses to go back and forth. So for the 3 different cities, I thought $20,000 would have been enough the first time. And I'm sure after that, it shouldn't have been more than probably $5,000.
Okay. I just can't, I don't understand the Sister City program yet. Again, I'm happy to support you, Mayor. I think it's a great idea to have a Sister City program. I just don't know what that program actually looks like from a funding standpoint.
Okay. Any other comments on that? Commissioner Donovan?
Yeah, Mayor, thank you for giving your items. I guess I just had more question on the process. I don't want to give a consensus or, an open support to any single items yet, just until I see what the rest of the board has planned, and then we can kind of prioritize from there. So I have no
Okay.
doubt I'll end up supporting you on some of these, and I think they're worthwhile. I don't want to give consensus or support to something until I've seen everybody else's, request when it comes to the general fund monies.
Okay. Any other comments? If not, that's all I have for the general fund. Vice Mayor Carr?
Thanks, Mayor. As we're aware, I mean, a lot of our salaries are coming out of the general fund. Ron also talked about the general fund being about $247,000 of funds available. The mayor just proposed about $56,000 out of that 250 that's available. Mark, I know we always budget certain things like this past fiscal year. Do we have a lot of that rolling over into 2021 this coming year that we didn't get to?
Yeah, I think it's going to depend on the pandemic and what it's called. Have you made any projection yet, Ron? I know it's a little early, but any projection with the ability to have any rollover, or are you still thinking we're going to be going into the reserves because we're not going to meet the budget with the with the payment to the businesses and all that thing. Have you done any recent projections? I know you go right up to the end of the budget year on that. Where are you right now with, are we going to have money roll over, or are we going to be taken to reserve to balance?
So you're talking about, are we going to have the 8.8 million to roll over, keeping the unassigned fund balance at 8.8 million?
What he's asking is, are we going to have money extra to do these things because we've got extra money that's not spent in this budget that you can roll over and use for some of these items in the next budget year?
I've been thinking of maybe right around 175,000 so far that I might have to be able to roll over.
Okay, is that included in that 250 number?
The 247?
Yeah.
No, that's not, that's separate from that.
Okay. Would that be like additional funds that could be used for additional projects, or were those already kind of rolled into the budget?
No, those are available.
Okay.
You know, if the projections come out right, we've cut some expenses and stuff, you know, maybe we might have about 175,000.
Okay,
And
thanks, Ron,
what's the date, Ron? You usually know definitively, because I know those numbers have changed from August to September to the end.
Yeah.
October 1st.
When do you have a good feel of when that is?
Next January. No. When the audit's done. I'll probably have a pretty good feel towards the end of October. You know, once we get all the revenue, all the expenses in. A lot of times through the month of October, we still got expenses being accrued back into September. So by the end of October, I might have a pretty good idea.
Okay.
If that helps.
Yeah, it does help. So we have a couple properties currently on this upcoming election that are listed for voting. I know one's up in the air right now, or two of them are up in the air with the boat ramp, depending on the lease option, if we don't come to an agreement there. You mentioned something along the lines of 1.4 million in the penny, and then close to 247 in the general funds. Do we have an idea like how those would be impacted if those were to pass?
Are you talking about the marina or the Hoffman property, or?
I mean, I guess it would be both. It sounded like based on the meeting when we had it, was the Hoffman property is going to go to the CRA, and then the marina was going to be funded either by penny fund or general fund. So I wasn't sure if you put that assumption in there at all, or if that's just completely open.
Well, those, we don't have those properties in the budget, if that's what you're talking about, since it's got to be voted on. I believe the CRA was going to handle the Hoffman property. We even gave a schedule, like probably trying to do and so we're not depleting the whole CRA fund. We were going to do maybe 500,000 the first year and then maybe 2 loans.
Yeah. Ron,
Okay.
The next.
Ron, I think what he's asking, and let me make sure it's right. I think he's asking if the marina, whatever that money is, for instance, if we went with our original proposal, which we still got the time to decide, if we went with the 700,000 we were going to do and then borrow from sanitation and pay over the year, that 700,000 would be part of that 1.4 that you have open. I think that's what he's asked. How much does that, the property sales, if it passes referendum, how much does it affect that money that you have available in that penny fund?
Well, we have 1.8 million available in the penny fund. Just in the budget, we've got earmarked 1.4 million, but we still have 400,000 remaining in fund balance in the penny fund for a total of 1.8 million. And I believe the way we financed it was a 700,000 in the first year for the marina. And then we did a loan for the next 2 years, 400,000 each. And I believe that still left 800,000 in the penny fund, since we were only doing 700,000 this year.
Got it. That helps.
Sorry if I strayed off on something else. You know, numbers and details. I don't.
All right. Thank you, Ron. Again, Mayor, I like your ideas a lot. Thank you for proposing those. Ron, thank you for answering my questions. I just have some ideas, and I'm going to do my best to keep the capital items out, the CIP and would the penny, would that fall under the CIP, or would that fall into the general area discussion, Mayor?
Well, I guess for both.
Okay.
CIP.
It's the
CIP.
Penny would fall in the CIP area. Okay.
CIP, yeah.
All right. So there's a couple small projects like the mayor talked about. I've got some ideas for the CIP that I would like to discuss when we come to that next. And that we're going to wait, Mayor, for that area, right, to talk about CIP projects.
Yes, sir.
Okay. There's just some beautification projects I think that would be wise to look at. The city's done a really good job overall over the past couple of years, but again, it's small bites or small steps over a few years will make a lasting impression and a lasting difference, especially with being a tourism town and a town that's just really passionate about our heritage and character and historic charm. So this year we're updating the gateway signs. We're having the wayfinding signs installed. I think those are all great things to have. About, I guess it was a year and a half ago or 2 years, actually probably 2 years ago, I went around and took pictures of all the public buildings and the parks and all the different signs that they have out in front of their buildings and parks. And that came up, I think it was about 19 different signs that the city has in front of their park buildings. I'm sorry, in front of their parks and then public buildings. So I do think it's time to unify these signs, especially with our gateway signs that will be installed later this year, with some type of monument sign that matches our gateway monument sign, just so it looks the same across the city. Because today you'll look at one building and Public Works is much different than the Public Safety Building, which is much different than the water plant, which is much different from the reclaimed water plant, which is much different from City Hall, which is different than maybe one of the parks, right? So I think updating the signs at the public buildings and going on an approach of you don't have to do them all in 1 year. I think just doing like a limited of them, maybe 25% would be a wise decision. Looking at Spring Bayou, when you drive up the Spring Bayou, you have a nice white wall that's been painted. At one point, this was a concrete wall or a brick wall. I think there's at least three different types of materials used from the top of Spring Bayou to Grand along Spring Boulevard. Another thing, this is all white. So if the city crew goes out and pressure washes it today and we have a rainstorm tomorrow, it's going to be all dirty again. So I would like to propose, again, it's not a huge expense, but to have at least the same type of wall all the way across. It's not going to be a white wall that always looks dirty. Again, this is a very popular area in our town. When people come to visit, you come down, it's Tarpon Avenue, you go right into that area. And then it also prevents a maintenance issue with our city staff as well. So it helps alleviate that staff from having to clean that wall constantly. One of the things that we talked about too in this current budget is historic signs. We have historic signs that are being worked on to go in front of the old jail, the golf course, Sunset Beach. I believe there's like 12 signs, and multiple commissioners expressed an interest in having additional signs throughout the Greek Town, Sponge Docks, other parts of Tarpon Springs. But I think this is a time where we probably want to look at funding maybe the next round if it's another 10 or 12 signs. I mean, it's probably another $10,000 that we're looking at that. Again, I think just keeping that going, we have a lot of historic aspects to our city, and it's just going to help educate our residents and also our visitors. Staying with the beautification projects, we've talked about our street signs in the historic district look great with the street signs. And the CRA is the next part. We're moving into the CRA to the stop signs and the road signs. I think it's important also to look at the secondary signs within the historic district, which talks about like the no parking signs, the speed limit signs, those types of poles. So I think it would be a wise decision to update those as well. Again, this isn't a super large spend. It might be somewhere around $5,000 to $7,000, but it would really tie the district together instead of having kind of a generic pole, and really tie them into the stop sign poles. And then continuing that throughout the city of Tarpon Springs, really looking at our highly trafficked four-way stops. So this would be like Sunset and Riverside, Florida Avenue and Curlew, MLK and Stafford, Mears and Stafford, MLK and Spring, Mears and Carolina. We only have a handful of very heavily populated four-way stops in the city of Tarpon Springs. So I would suggest that we look at updating those signs as well. With that, there's going to be the Mears Boulevard that's going to be added. Hopefully we'll have a ribbon cutting here before the end of the summer. But I would like to see some beautification efforts there. But that's probably going to fall into the tree fund. So I could talk to the city manager about that. The Pinellas Trail from south of Martin Luther King to Mears also can use some beautification aspects. The city did a great job, I think, north of Tarpon Avenue and south of Tarpon Avenue to like Lemon Street, or I'm sorry, Martin Luther King. But there's still some areas to improve between Mears and Martin Luther King as well. Pinellas Avenue south of Orange Street, or I'm sorry, north of Orange Street to Dota, Canese, and Live Oak. There's still some areas for improvement. I know we've had some nice presentations from staff, but at some point it would be nice to see some continued beautification aspects in that area. We could talk more in detail with that. And then you may be familiar with the planter bulb outs along Pinellas Avenue. If I'm guilty of it, I've hit them multiple times. You can see the tire marks all over them. About half of them don't have any plants in them, or there's a large hole where people could drive into them and there's issues. So I would recommend that we remove those planter bulb outs. If we don't remove them, at least add some plants to them. With that, I think it's going to just help the citizens that have had complaints about it overall. And then from the code enforcement funds, so when the code enforcement funds are and I'm getting away from beautification projects now, and pretty much all my other items are within the CIP or the CRA, but the code enforcement funds, my understanding, drop back into the general funds. And I think ultimately those code enforcement funds that are collected should cover the salaries for code enforcement to start with. And then at that point, they're split amongst beautification projects, recreation expansion with parks, if there's parks improvements, and also splitting it between the land preservation fund. So the land preservation fund was developed at one point by a commissioner to acquire properties and to roll money in there. So I think instead of rolling the code enforcement funds, which are typically collected from nuisance properties and properties that actually devalue the neighborhood, I think putting them in those three areas that actually build up the value of our city would make a big difference. So I don't have any questions though for staff that fall into the general fund. I'm pretty pleased overall with everything we're seeing and the ideas that we have listed in the budget. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Terrapini?
You're muted, Commissioner.
Thanks, Commissioner. Thank you, Mayor. Just to try and get right to it in the essence of time. Ron, on the in the general fund, some of the expenditures, if you could just help me understand some of them and probably just give some clarification. Where I see it says physical environment, can you give me a better idea of what that is for $1.4 million?
Is it particular in the general fund?
Yeah, it's general. Well, yeah, that's where we're at in the conversation, I think. So, yeah, general fund. It says, sorry, I didn't write down the page, but in the executive summary, it's like somewhere around page 69. It says physical environment, $1.4 million. And I didn't know if that was like based on some of the other things that I've seen in the budget. I didn't know if that physical environment had something to do with some of the improvements that we're doing as it relates to like infrastructure.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. It's just what you said. It's basically dealing with infrastructure.
Okay. So yeah, okay, here we go. Physical environment, $1.439 million budgeted 2021. So I think that's good. I think it maybe could be coded something a little bit different in terms of title. But the physical environment, we're saying that we have $1.4 million budgeted, and within that category, we're saying that that is some of the sewer line improvements, some of the lift station improvements.
Not in the general fund. You're not going to have water, Those will be in the water and sewer fund.
Okay, so give me an idea of what physical environment means for $1.4 million, please.
I think what a good part of that is might be part of things like the cemetery. That's under physical environment.
So I have cemetery on my list too, as a different line item. And my question to you on that for almost $500,000, what are some of those expenses? Is that for $500,000? Are we seeing some line items fall in that expense as it relates to like the phase 2 expansion?
Yes, you got the cemetery operations, the personnel, but then yes, you do have capital within there.
So could you give an idea of how that breaks down? And first of all, as physical environment, and there's a separate line item for cemetery, those more than likely aren't the same. That $500,000 is not in that $1.4 million, is it?
Yes, the $500,000, yes, would be in that $1.4 million.
Okay, all right, so that explains that. So of the $458,000 in the cemetery, we're saying that a portion of that is for operational costs, including salary, and then the balance is contributed towards the phase 2 expansion.
Correct.
Okay, can we get some more detailed clarification in terms of like how much of it is for towards the expansion and how much of it is actually budgeted for the salary costs and operational costs?
I can come back with it.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, I don't want to hold us up. Okay, so part of that answers the physical environment. Part of that is the cemetery. Can you give some other examples to make up the balance of that $1 million?
Physical environment. I'm trying to think of which departments that might be.
I don't think Ron's found it yet where you're talking about page wise or.
Okay, so page
66.
Page 66, correct.
Well, you're probably going to have roads and streets underneath there.
In physical environment?
Yeah.
Okay. That would explain some for sure. I think I saw some line item stuff for 150 for paving, a couple $100,000 for brick streets, etc. Okay.
So you'd like us to break that out for you and bring that back all breaking out for you?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think the code name physical environment in general, I think that's, kind of misleading. I think it could definitely be labeled better. And I'm not, I'm not complaining. I think it's good. As a matter of fact, I think in a lot of our budget, especially in areas in the water and sewer fund, we're spending a lot of money on infrastructure, which I think is a good thing. I think that's where you see, your residents talk a lot about is that they want to see us spend money on infrastructure. So I'm happy to see that in other aspects of the budget. And I think that it's important that we, promote that and make that information available to our residents. And if we do so by, just labeling a little bit better to start, I think that helps.
It's sort of a vague term, it's our state chart of accounts that, they make us use it.
I believe it.
Yeah, I knew it was an accounting thing.
And then in the North Anclote Park, we're spending $69,000, and I wasn't sure if we had a salaried employee out there or where a bulk of that money is coming from.
I believe we have one employee out there.
Do we? Okay, I wasn't sure. And then non-departmental, I see $1,050,000, and that's a 20% increase. Let me see if I can give you a page number on that. It's noted a couple times. One is page 67, but then in terms of an increase on page 68, the last item, non-departmental the difference in fiscal year 2020 and what's budgeted this year is a 20% increase. I'm curious as to more info on non-departmental and then also why the increase.
That is where the $247,000 is residing. The reserve money.
Aha. Got it. Okay. And then could you elaborate more on what else shares that expense?
The 240. Oh,
no.
Non-departmental?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, let me get my book here and stuff. Well, you've got part 86,000 for the health plan consultant. You got 15,000 for annual audit. You got 90,000, well, you've got a Humane Society, 3,600, Jolly Trolley, 45,000, fireworks, 25,000, armored car service, 5,000, snow place, 9,000. Some phone equipment charges, 10,000, electric charges of City Hall, 70,000. I believe that includes part of the generator we got at City Hall. City generator lease, 60,000, health clinic rent, 24,000. Some other smaller items in the rental areas there for printers and post office box. Liability and property insurance, 106,000. Long-term disability insurance, 21,000. Some repairs and maintenance, sponge exchange, 7,500. Hardware maintenance, 5,000. Copier printer copies, 5,000. Software maintenance, 7,000.
So Ron, can
Yeah.
you
Want me to
please
keep
send
going?
us that detailed? Yeah, I mean, not now, but can you please send us that in detail or tell me where I can find that?
Okay, yeah, in the detail book, I can copy these pages and get those to you.
Please. I mean, if we're going to have $1 million line item comprised of 20 different things, I'd like to see what makes up that $1 million. And I know it's not that because there's 240 of it is, non-committed. And I think that goes to my point, right? Like there's probably a slew of things just on that list that are worth a discussion that this commission might feel we don't need or can be budgeted later or whatever, where, we could add monies to the $240 that we have, quote unquote, unassigned, not in the unassigned fund balance. So, I think as we continue to go through this and in more detail and hopefully when we have more time, we'll see more things that we may or may not need collectively as a group and we can talk about. And I know, other people have items, so I'll keep on going. And then on other current charges, and that's on the next page, on page 67. And it's next to, I guess, not line 49, but element code 49. It says other current charges, and that's an increase of 145%. So what are the deets on that?
That's getting back to the 247,000.
See how I know how to find money, Ron? I
It
know where it's
resides
at.
in point 49.
Okay, so now but that's in an addition to, right? So if I took the 289 and then I took the $1,050,000, you're showing those as two different items. Is that right?
Yeah, well, they're all within that non-departmental and that one's 0.49 within that department, if I'm following you on that.
So you're saying the 289, that's other current charges.
It includes the 247,000.
Okay. That includes, okay, and then, but do you have the $1,050,000 in addition to that or no?
Well, the $1,050,000, that's a total of the non-departmental department.
Okay. So that includes that 289.
Yes.
Understood. All right.
Well, just
Okay.
because the 289, there could be some 0.49s in some other departments. So, but the 247,000 is part of non-departmental. Between 289 less 247, that 42,000 might be somewhere else in another department.
Okay. So again, want everybody to have an opportunity to speak tonight. Let me just touch on some of the other capital things that this commission may or may not want to do. Just to float some ideas. Again, I'm not prepared tonight to talk about them in detail because I think that as we flesh out the budget more, there will be more or less money for us to talk about spending. But I'm all for continuing to fund our grant programs. I think we see a lot of bang for our buck in terms of the grant programs, the facade grants, the business recruitment stuff, the code changes that we're making. We're offering $7,500. That's where I would like to see a lot of money if we have money for additional funding. I know that those funds, have money in them and probably have more money allotted, but that's where my focus is regarding some of this unassigned money, as well as brick and mortar beautification projects. And I know we all have some of those in mind. So just, from 1,000-foot view, that's where my focus would be on some of those additional monies we have to spend. Thank you.
Commissioner Donovan?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. On some of my questions for the general fund, I'll try to save it for one-on-one staff time or maybe a future meeting, just in the essence of time, trying to give Commissioner Vaticiotis the right to speak in 40 minutes here, a little less than that after me. So I have two proposals for some of those unassigned funds that we've been discussing. And I'd ask that everybody reference the photos I emailed in today of the Dorset basketball courts. There's 2 basketball courts at Dorset Park. They're both really dilapidated. They desperately need to be replaced. I just covering the basis of the photos that I took. There's cracks throughout both courts, along with minor depressions in the courts that result in level change. The rims are also rusting. I think if you threw up a brick shot up there, rust is going to sprinkle down in your eyes. The surrounding landscaping is merging with the courts. So there's weeds literally on the court that you're supposed to play basketball on. There's sand everywhere. And these 2 courts get a lot of use, and, they're in bad enough shape to the point where it's gone beyond, being tough to play on. And it's become a liability safety wise. The cracks everywhere, the level changes. I mean, you're just asking somebody to hurt themselves out there right now. And I've worked with staff on this item. They're in support of it. And I know the last time we spoke, Mr. City Manager, it was between $40,000 to $50,000 to fully renovate and actually replace both courts. So I'm thinking $45,000. Does that sound like a good number to budget?
Yes.
Okay, so I mean, again, that'd be $45,000. You'd replace both courts, and again, they get a lot of use. So again, I encourage you to look at the pictures I sent in, and if those aren't good enough, please, by all means, drive out there, try to shoot around the basketball, and good luck. Stay safe, because those courts are dangerous if left as is. The other initiative of mine is more shade at our sports fields. So the issue of additional shading is something that's kind of plagued our youth sports teams for a long time now. Back when I used to play on the fields, not too long ago, we had no shade out there, and that was always an issue. And now, as the leagues have grown, you've seen more and more teams add shade, now to the point where I think our tarpon leagues are some of the last leagues to actually get some man-made shade in there. So if you drive out to Eastlake Fields or Countryside Fields or Clearwater Fields, what you'll see above a lot of the bleachers is tents. They're like man-made tent shades out of those sail shades. Some of them just actually use those sail shades, similar to what we have as canopy over our statue in the sponge docks of the ferries. So again, I mean, the sunshades are something that's super cheap. It's going to really enhance people being able to go out and watch the games because that sun is hot. And in a lot of our parks, there's no room for, an additional tree because there's a building or a bleacher there. And some of these man-made sunshades are really important. So for those, it'd be about $20,000. And those are my only 2 asks, my only 2 proposals as far as the general fund goes. Would again be $45,000 to replace the 2 Dorset basketball courts and $20,000 for additional shading at our parks, namely our Discovery Sports Complex, Riverside Field, and Sisler Field. And with that, I'll turn it over to Commissioner Vaticiotis.
Thank you, Commissioner Donovan. I was going to ask you on the court at Dorset Park, is that the only one that you saw like that in condition, or there are others that need replacement or repair?
So those are the 2 courts there. So there's only 2 basketball courts. There's also a tennis court, but those are the 2 basketball courts that are at Dorset Park, and both of them are in equally bad condition.
No, the courts are fine, and that's what I meant. But is there anything else that in Dorset Park that is of that similar condition that would need to be repaired, I guess is what I'm getting at.
I don't believe so. I mean, the baseball field out there is really state of the art. I mean, the Rays could go out there and practice. It's a really nice baseball field. The tennis court is probably going to need repairs sooner rather than later. but definitely the one that needs to be addressed ASAP is the basketball courts.
Okay. I mean, there's Sisler Field is beautiful, and I just want to make sure that we kind of spread all of that around a little bit. So thank you for that. Thank you. Let me just get into this, and y'all can tell me to shut up. So first of all, and I appreciate Commissioner Terrapini's insights on this funding, and I'm looking forward to seeing that as well. Just a general question, Vice Mayor Carr brought up page 48 where the positions are split. And then also Commissioner Terrapini mentioned the water and sewer revenues. And this is just in preparation for discussion. And Ron, I think I know the answer to this, but these 24 positions are split. And a number of them are split out of the water and sewer and so forth, collection and stuff like that. And so the purpose of the enterprise fund transfers are to go to the general fund, but the actual personnel costs that are split are still coming out of the individual enterprise funds. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. So the justification for making enterprise fund transfers is largely to offset the cost of what we would impose on other departments that not necessarily are related to enterprise funds. So I think that's going to be helpful in that discussion. I wanted to make sure everybody understood that, and I appreciate Vice Mayor Carr bringing that up. So on the general fund now, I'm just going to go through these. And Ron, I hope you've got a sharp pencil there. And I'm not expecting any answer, or maybe if a commissioner's got some observations, he can throw that in. But on the city commission expenditures, you still have the $10,000 for me for healthcare, and that needs to be taken out. I don't need healthcare. We talked about that briefly. And I appreciate the 3% increase in salaries, and I'm going to save that one for later. But there's a couple of things I want to say in that regard. And we're going to talk about individual salary raises later. Is that correct? The ones that have been requested, executive salaries and that sort of thing, when we get to the salary in about a week, I guess. Is that correct?
Should be Tuesday night.
Okay. The one thing I do want us to think about, though, before we get to Tuesday night, I think the IT department's done a phenomenal job. I think if any department that has worked diligently to make this, what we're doing this evening, work, has been the IT department. And they're here as long as we are till 11:30, and I know the city clerks are as well. So I'd like City Manager LaCourse, if you could think about some kind of a bonus for the ID department. That would be for all I think it's 3 branches in that. I know they're all participating in that, and at least I'm asking for that. And obviously it would take the approval of the commission to approve it, but at least they need something to look at. And I'm gonna leave that up to you if that's acceptable, or unless you want me to recommend something.
Well, that's acceptable, and we can talk about it, between
Okay.
time.
Yeah, I think they've done a phenomenal job. On the internal auditor, it is the 42,000 is in the general fund, and the balance is in, I guess, the water and sewer fund. But basically, it's 77,000. I think we'll be extremely lucky if we get an internal auditor for that amount of money, at least one that we would consider hiring. So I just want to point that out, that's probably, my salary. My salary is going to be a plus. A minus 10,000, but I think you're going to have about a plus 15 on the internal auditor. On the city attorney, um, there's an increase of about $20,000 in that budget. And I see it largely in the litigation and also in the municipality general. Now, I'm not sure what municipality general means. Do you know what that is, Ron, or City Manager LaCourse?
Ron, are you frozen?
Commissioner, if you have a page in front of you, if you can just state it so I can.
It's 38. I should give that at the outset. Thanks, Commissioner Terrapini.
Is that 38 on the detail budget?
Yes, and that's another good point, Commissioner Donovan. I like it's a nice layout and certainly makes good PR on the executive budget, but I like the work from the 3-reading binder. That's page 38. In any case, City Manager, of course, I'm not looking for an answer tonight.
Okay, I'll get it for you. I think we got Ron frozen, I think.
Right, that's fine. And then
Okay. What was the two again? What was the two again? The two areas?
Litigation, there was a bump on that of about $10,000. And there's something called municipality general, and there's a bump on that of about $10,000.
Okay.
And then I mentioned to you earlier today, City Manager, of course, I think it would be helpful, very similar to what Ms. Lemons did for economic development, that maybe we don't want to do it tonight because, again, we're going to be running short of time. But for Ms. Vincent, our planning director, to kind of walk through what her plans are. She briefed us several times on the comprehensive plan and some other things that she was probably going to need some help on from a consultant's perspective. And the budget did jump from 460,000 up to 560,000, 567, and that's page 40 for everybody. So it would be helpful if she just kind of walks through that. I want to make, from my perspective, I want to make sure she's got enough money to do what she needs to do, and we don't at mid-year or 3/4 of the way through, we're not being able to accomplish what we need to do. I just want us to get it done. And I think she's got a lot of work that needs to be done in that area. And I'll leave that up to you, City Manager LaCourse.
Yes, we'll make sure we'll get that in. If not tonight, then we'll be on the list for Tuesday.
Right. Page 50. There's a big jump. I see Ron's still, Mr. Herring is still frozen. On page 50, there's a big jump in the retirement contribution for the police department. It jumps from 526,000 up to 633,000. That's an extra $100,000. I'd like to have some information on that. I think all the commissioners would as well. Obviously, you're going to provide it to all the commissioners as well. That's a pretty good, that's pretty much a 20% jump in the retirement contributions. You got that, City Manager, of course?
Yes, I do. I was trying to get a hold of Ron that he knows if he knows he's frozen or not.
Okay. Well, lucky we are being recorded, right? The video, so you can do a replay on it.
Yeah, but I'm
All right,
writing them down too.
Right. On page 60, code enforcement. That's right after the police department. I'm hoping that there's been some discussion with all the commissioners about some plans on changing. Maybe I should ask you that first, City Manager, of course.
I think 4 out of 5. I think 4 out of 5 has been talked to already, and we probably plan to present. The chief will be talking to you about that Tuesday night because he'll have it all together. It'll be Tuesday, but I think we've reached 4 out of 5 of the commissioners.
Okay, I'll defer that. It's just a general question of how the budget's going to change in code enforcement. Not how much, but what should we expect as far as a change goes in that. But we'll talk about it next Tuesday night. On the fire and rescue, there's a pretty good bump on that from 5.56 million to 5.7 million, and a lot of that is regular salaries and wages. And I think that there was some grants that we lost this year expired.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay,
that's the
so-
grant we lost for the 4 firefighters, the portion of payment, and we took
Okay.
responsibility. That's
If-
that's a jump there.
All righty, if you could confirm that, just.
Yeah,
put
Scott
that
Young,
number-
Scott Young should be on there. Scott? Scott's coming.
Yes, I believe the biggest jump there is about 400,000 there just for that alone. The SAFER grant ends after this year, so we will incur the whole cost of those 4 paramedics' salaries.
Okay, that's good. Both you and the police department tend to hold the line on expenses, and I appreciate that. It's just something that caught my eye, and I wanted to ask about that. On page 77, the building department, there's a pretty good bump in the salaries there. And I would assume that was, if you could confirm, that was Ms. Brewer's transfer from one department to the other?
Yes, I believe it was Ms. Brewer. She was in Public Works, I think, and was transferred. The entire position was transferred to building. So obviously it's going to go up because the money's going to go from there to building. Is that right, Mr. Powell, you on?
Yes, we brought Shannon on last year, so we have that full salary within our budget where we didn't have it before. It was in Public Works prior to that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Powell. On page 101, the cemetery fund, Commissioner Terrapini, there's a pretty good bump in the regular salaries from 146 to 159,000 on that. Can you provide a little detail as far as where that's coming from?
Paul Smith, are you on here? Paul will be coming on. There he is.
Technical difficulties. Would you mind repeating that?
Yes, Mr. Smith, in the cemetery fund, account 1409 on page 101 of the 3-ring binder, there's a pretty good bump in the salaries from 146,000 to 159 on regular salaries and wages. And I don't know what that amount of increase would have included. I would have thought maybe about a 5,000, but not an extra 10,000 above that.
Yes, we did do a reorganization last year, and that's taking full effect, I believe, in this budget. It's where we elevated the supervisor position and also that second in command. And part of that was the increased administrative responsibilities with the expansion. It's going to be a lot of sales and paperwork happening hopefully soon.
Do you remember when that was that we did for the, because I know it was before the commissioner got on when the board approved that. And again, it's in preparation for the new cemetery to come on board. You remember when that was so he can find the information? Or make sure you.
I can send it out. I believe it was last fiscal.
That's fine. I want to take kind of broad strokes on this stuff, and I don't want to get into every line item, but each department for sure. And there's some departments I don't have a question on. Some of policy. On the library, well, let me defer that to later. I can talk to you about that offline. It's something concerning the raises, but to be honest with you, I don't see that at this moment. I'll look at that again. On the Division of Arts and Historical Resources, the budget on that is fairly flat. It goes from 422,000 to 428. There is a little bit of an increase in the salaries, but I'm not sure. Is there a reason why it's flat? Is it because of this COVID thing we don't expect to be doing as much, or there's a couple of departments like this that historically run flat, and the budget increases by 5 or 6% a year, but some of these departments are just predictably flat. And I just want to make sure we're not continuing to dig a hole in ourselves in this particular area for the residents, and that we continue providing quality programs for them. And I want to make sure we've got enough money that does that.
Diane Wood, you should be on here to talk about that.
Yes. Hello. Hold on. Let me just come in and start video. Excuse me. Video. Okay. Oh, here I am.
There you go.
Yes. Thank you, Commissioner, for asking that question. COVID has definitely affected our revenue. We actually get revenue from quite a few different sources, you know, the general fund. And then we also have revenue from our ticket sales and donations, and also from grants and our memberships. And then also one of the things that I've instituted is going out and getting sponsorships
Up there.
from outside businesses. But with the COVID-19 pandemic, we had cut our whole season short because we normally go from September through July the following year as far as the performing arts goes. And we were forced because of COVID to stop our performances in March. And so we've lost 22,000 in ticket sales revenue. That was revenue that was returned to our patrons because of canceled or postponed shows. However, my staff has done a wonderful job of reaching out. We've reached out to our patrons, and of that 22,000 lost, we retained 13,000 of that in gift certificates. And then our patrons donated the value of their tickets, about 1,200. So, you know, of that 22,000, we've only really lost 7,800 in revenue. The other thing that happens when we don't do performances is we don't have the expenses. So we do have, we only made 61,000 because of COVID of our 185,000 that we would normally bring in, but we massively reduced our expenses. So our performing arts budget is right now from 107 has gone down, is 107 versus like the 224,000 that we would normally spend. And I can also show you over the past couple seasons, we have actually increased our revenue, and we bring in like about 10 to 11,000 ticket sale buyers that bring new people into Tarpon Springs that from all over. I have a wonderful scatter graph that I could show you that shows it pulling from Hillsborough and Pinellas County of how we contribute with the performing arts, you know, to bring in new people to Tarpon Springs. So I'm hoping that we're going to go ahead and do a soft opening at the Heritage Museum in October, you know, God willing. And we're going to be social distancing, and we will bring in some more revenue before the end of the fiscal year. And if my season goes as planned and we can get a handle on this COVID, come January, there will be a huge influx of revenue from the department. Can I answer another question?
No, that's fine. I just, you know, I'm hoping this COVID thing doesn't go all year. I'm hoping that maybe around December, we all hope, and you never know. We're hoping that things would go back to normal before that, but I just want to make sure we don't cut ourselves short. And I appreciate your comments on your revenue, but I don't believe it's not an enterprise fund. So it's a general fund. And I want to make sure that what we do, we've got an outstanding set of facilities that we've got. And I just want to make sure that we put them to the best use that we can,
yes,
COVID
sir.
or not. But so just that in mind, and City Manager, of course, we can talk about that some more as well. So,
Yes.
all right.
Sure.
Thank you.
Ron's back on. Ron's back on. You're back with us, Ron.
I made it.
You have an answer tonight, so we could get off about the city attorney, the increase in litigation and municipal general. What exact? I can't remember specifically. what you factored into those increases you put in under city attorney?
Is that the $20,000?
It's 10 and 10. Municipality is the 10, and then there was a litigation increase of 10.
No, just looking at the history, the budget in the city attorney hasn't changed for I don't know how many years. I thought maybe it was a good time to start increasing the budget some more. So that was my putting that in there, just trying to increase another 20,000.
All righty. That's something we can look at, I guess, as well. Thank you, Mr. Herring. On the Safford House, page 124, this is a little bit of a pet peeve for me. If you look at line 46, repairs and maintenance, it's $0. Unless I'm reading that wrong, it's a blank. And I can't believe the Safford House, over 100-year-old home, doesn't need any kind of repair all year long. And maybe it comes out of building maintenance fund. I don't know, but I would thought that something would be listed for repairs and maintenance on the Safford House. And to me, I just want to make sure this is one of those forgotten buildings that we get into extremis and we wind up with a whole lot of rotted wood and things of that nature. I know we're still waiting for wood to do the repairs that were budgeted last fiscal year before we can paint it, I guess. And so we're kind of dragging this thing out. In the meantime, the Safford House is deteriorating. So is there a reason why we haven't budgeted anything for repairs and maintenance?
Yeah, Tom Function, will you comment on that? Because I believe it's in your budget.
Yes, sir. How are we doing today? Tom Function, Public Works Director. Yeah, we actually do have funds. We're actually about 3/4 away replacing the wood on the Safford House, as we talked about earlier. And there's actually additional, I believe, $15,000 for painting, and the rest of the work once we're completed doing the wood repair. Most of the work that we do in the Safford House falls under general operation plans. We've fixed air conditioners.
What do you have specifically in this budget, or if you don't have it specifically, this one, not this one now, the one we're talking about for next year, what do you have in there for the Safford House?
Oh yeah, let me pull this up over here. I'd be happy to show that.
It's page 124 in the 3-ring binder. And the same question on the train depot.
Not a problem.
There's no repairs and maintenance on that either.
Page 124.
And the 3-ring binder.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. I'm not finding, I know I have it. And I apologize.
All right.
Safford House deck repair and painting on $25,000.
Yeah, that's on items placed in standby, Tom.
Yeah, it is. But that's what I put in the budget over for that. And that includes the painting and the repair, which I actually have already. Partial of the deck repair is being done as we speak. We're about 50% repair done on that. And then of course, the rest of the work will be done in the next fiscal year.
But you don't expect anything new that you're going to need beyond what you've already scheduled to do?
As far as the deck repair or any woodwork?
Safford House.
Safford House, yes. A lot of the general maintenance we do in the Safford House falls under general operations, air conditioning, some minor painting. Yeah, that's what we have there.
Can I just chime in for some clarification? I think there's some confusion here. So on 125, Mr. Vadkiotis, of the summary, there's a list of items placed in standby. And the Safford House that Mr. Funchkin was talking about, Safford House deck repair and painting, it has $25,000 for that cost. So I think what your question is what we should be pulling that into the general funds for this upcoming fiscal year and not have it on a standby list is what I think you're getting to.
I guess what I'm getting at is that in my experience, when we wanted to do some work in the new fiscal year, you'd have money budgeted with that. And I think a whole lot of stuff that from my experience, and I'm just an engineer, I'm very literal. I go a straight line from point A to point B. There isn't a whole lot of zigzagging and I don't want to call it hocus pocus, but mixing accounts and things like that. I'd like for something that's going to be clearly understandable, not to get into some of the questions and explanations that Commissioner Terrapini had with the 247,000. And so my point is, are we expecting to do any work on the Safford House that's not a carryover, that's not on a standby list, that isn't not, and we don't show it in the budget? Is there anything that this building needs? I guess is what I'm getting at. Remember,
Yeah.
supposedly at some point, we're going to have a building preventative maintenance program and schedule in front of us, hopefully this next fiscal year. And I would hope that that would have taken into account the Safford House and the train depot, for example. So I guess my question, and Vice Mayor Carr, you can answer it if you'd like. Are we going to do anything to the Safford House that's for this upcoming fiscal year that should be going into the budget?
I'd be happy to answer that. I am doing work on the Safford House as we speak. We are replacing the decking wood. We've talked about that. And then I put in for the budget next year's painting of the exterior, the deck and the rest of the building.
Is that in the CIP or is that in the general fund?
In the CIP. A lot of the maintenance, the general maintenance work that's done there, whether it's air conditioning or some painting or a window repair, whatever that may be, falls on the general operation, and we do that.
No, I understand that part. Don't get me wrong. I understand that. I was just, so the painting is coming out of the CIP instead of the general fund.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir.
And maybe Bob Robertson can pipe in, because his project is working on this assessment of the buildings and stuff. Bob, do you have anything to add on where you are? Have you done the Safford House yet? Where you are in that process? That we're going to be giving that report on our maintenance of all the building stuff very soon, not into next budget year, but very soon as we get finished with it and stuff. Do you have anything to?
Just a quick update on that. We're about 75% complete doing the evaluations in the city for all the buildings. We did do this Safford House, but we don't have a report ready yet. This is an in-house type project that we're working towards, but I appreciate what Commissioner Vaticiotis is suggesting. We definitely want to have that ready for certainly the next time around.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just, I go by the Safford House, not a lot of people do. I do, and I look at it, and I know what Mr. Function is saying, but also remember what it looked like as well. And I'd like to keep it looking the way I remembered it as well, not the way we're living with it right now. And it's the same thing with the train depot. There's a lot of pride in that building, and I'd like to make sure that we keep up with it rather than continuing to play catch up.
And actually on the train depot, there was $20,000 for deck replacement, which we are again doing that in-house, and that's scheduled to start in the next couple of weeks. So.
Right. I know, Mr. Function, but in next fiscal year, it's zero, where this year you had 472. And I guess that deck repairs out of the CIP as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And that's a point that we need to discuss. These are kind of regular maintenance items that I think ought to be coming out of the general fund, but if there's a good reason of putting them in the CIP, that's fine.
Sure.
Let me move on to the list of things that I had. That's it for the general fund. The projects I talked about, there were two memoranda that I sent. One was for the downtown. These are nothing new. These were started by City Manager Posovac, and they just keep getting, they're basically forgotten, but it's basically, there were a lot of holes and voids of trees, palm trees in different locations along Safford, along Tarpon Avenue, and a lot of the acorn lights. I can get into the history of the acorn lights and why they're set haphazardly right now. Our current city manager had nothing to do with that. I want to make sure that he understands that. And I don't know if the commission's interested, but I know Vice Mayor Carr, he wants to do some consistency on the signs, and I appreciate that. But we ought to kind of take a hard look at the downtown and kind of put it back the way it was 20 years ago. Not because somewhere along the line we forgot to put the conduit in the ground for the acorn lamps, and we went back and did it, and we wound up with some kind of a goofy look to it, as well as a lot of trees that we never did. So that's pretty much the downtown. We'll get into that. And the city manager has my memorandum on that. On the sponge dock, similarly, we started on pre-COVID. There's a number of items that I listed in that. They're nothing major expense, things such as the wireless distributed sound system, lighting, and so forth is in that list. And I provided that. I believe I sent it to each of you as well. And I provided that to, I did. I see that on the copy too. And I provided that to the city manager. So I can get with you and identify some cost associated with each one if you'd like. I know
Yes.
Mr. Function's already done some work on that, but in helping put this list together. But I think between the five of us, we're going to find that that $247,000 is not going to go very far with everything. And I agree with Commissioner Donovan that maybe what our vision ought to take a little bit of precedent over maybe some of the other boilerplate items in the budget, but that's a matter of discussion. And then, of course, I do want to follow up on the salaries with the two city clerks adjustment. And again, I want to make sure the projects I just mentioned are in there as well. Thank you, Mayor. That's all I have.
Well, that leaves us 5 minutes left. So I don't think there's enough time to move on to the CIP. We only have 5 minutes left, so I will. I guess we can close the meeting if since the time has expired or is getting close to be expired. It's 4 minutes left.
Mayor, I've got a quick comment if you're okay with that.
Sure.
I think we all had some great comments in all different parts of Tarpon Springs and all different demographics of Tarpon Springs tonight. I think it's great to have that diversity in the mindset on how we approach different things in Tarpon Springs. So I'm encouraged by that with this budget season. I've been keeping track of them and taking notes here, and I think we could pretty much within the general fund, we're doing pretty good, I think, with what's available. So I just want to say great job to all the commission here and the mayor on working on the general fund so far.
Mr. Licouris, you heard all the wishes and all the things that all the commissioners and I were wishing to have. Did you get a chance to write them down and add them up and see how much that's going to be?
Not the addition. Remember, we have to go back and look at it. For instance, a lot of there'll be tree funds. That's not going to affect your 240. So we'll take all these, and by Tuesday, we'll look at what actually, again, if there's other places to get the money besides that 247 we're talking about, there's other funds. For instance, we could do 20, 30,000 of trees in this thing and it wouldn't affect that money. So we've got them all. We'll go put it together and what funds they may come from. If any, the impact fee money, it can be used for some of these, which again, adds some money to there. So we'll take from now till Tuesday to try to put together all of these and what funds we can get it from and see if there's other places to do some of it. So that money isn't all taken out, and hopefully there's some more to work with and stuff. So we'll do that between now and Tuesday.
Well, it said, Ron says 247 plus 175 that he's able to come up with, right?
You remember that's an unknown. Remember how I don't like unknowns, like we're getting funded for the dredge and stuff like that. I don't like unknowns. He's estimating now, but we don't know where that's going to be in that time. Now, that's not to say we can have a list of the 170 if it occurs, but it could very well be 170 the other way by the time we get till October. So, we know we have the 247 in hand. So it could be a standby list or something for that. Again, I've seen those numbers change from August to September drastically. There could be more, but I don't want to count. I'd like to get in the projects, as many of these as we can within what we know. And then if we turn up in October with another 70,000, you guys get to go at it again, and maybe some other things or some things we didn't get to. It will be your decision. to do those.
Mayor, may I say something? I think there's going to be some additional things too. Grants that we offered some of the youth leagues last year. We need to kind of revisit that. That's Commissioner Donovan. He didn't say anything about that tonight, but maybe that he's thinking about that. I support everything that all the commissioners said tonight, and I'm looking forward to the discussions in the future. My issue is not what was said or what is desired. My is more of a process and trying to get my arms around it to figure out how we can talk about these things to where everybody's on the same page. So I want to make sure everybody understands that. And I'm probably talking quickly tonight because we're there as far as time, and we're pressed. We've been pressed all year long with COVID. So I just want to continue on, and maybe by the time we have to approve the budget, we'll be there on everything, and everybody gets what they want. So thank you.
Yeah. And again, that's my job from this meeting, to try to get you everything all five of you said, whatever way I can, to get those for you.
Okay, well, thank you, Mark. And I want to thank everybody for having a great meeting tonight. The time is 9 o'clock. It has expired, so the meeting is adjourned.
See ya.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night.
Aye.